Hey guys, it's Allison here, and I wanted to share a fun watercolor tip, trick, whatever you want to call it, with you guys today. I've been having some fun playing with really expensive set of watercolors. Here you go. That is it. Yep, super duper expensive. They were actually attached to a coloring book that one of my daughters received, and I don't really like them painting in the house because they tend to paint the house and not just what the paper they're supposed to be getting the paint on. So I just sort of quietly took this away and nobody has said anything about it. And I've been having some fun painting with it. And in my blog post, if you click on the link that's posted in the description of this video, in my blog post I have a few cards that I created that have a watercolor front to them. And that is kind of the look that we're going for today. I have embossed some images on those card fronts and then painted over top so that the embossing shows through as white. I guess the background shows through. And for that image, I am using this stamp set. This is from my June Simon Says stamp card kit, and it's got all these great sort of doodly flowers and leaves, and then a fabulous sentiment, look for the miracles. So I'm going to be using this flower today, and I will stamp later on in this with this. So first off, this is some watercolor paper, and I bought a watercolor pad from Michael's, and this is just a scrap actually that I had left over from making the cards that are on my blog. I've just gone over it with my powder tool. That means that the embossing powder should theoretically stick to it better. And then I've got my stamp mounted on an acrylic block, and I'm going to be using some Versamark. The one problem with stamping in Versamark on white and then embossing it in clear is that it tends not to show up. It's very hard to see. Well, you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but I'm pressing down quite firmly, and I'm allowing the Versamark time to soak into the paper. I did find that some of my stamped images were not super clear, and I'm not sure if it's because the watercolor paper takes the embossing differently than regular paper, or because my embossing powder is quite old. Could be both of those, who knows. I'm just cleaning off my block here because I want to put on a couple of vines. And I do want to leave some space up here for my sentiment. I'm just going to be stamping the sentiment with ink after painting everything. So I just want to add a couple of these vines in for a bit of interest. And yeah, that's going to be a little bit backwards, but that's okay. We can manage. And now I will put my embossing powder on that. So I've just got a piece of scratch paper that I'm going to put down underneath to catch the dregs of the embossing powder, and I'm just using some Stampin' Up! Clear embossing powder. You can use any clear embossing powder. This just happens to be what I have in my stash. And I'm being quite liberal, pouring it over the images, and I will gently tap it off. And the camera probably will not catch that, but I can see that it's stamped quite well. Now I'm just going to flick the back. That just gets rid of any extra embossing powder on there. Now I'm going to dump my embossing powder back in my pot, emboss the image, and come back and show you. So I'm not sure if the camera is picking that up or not, but I can now see the embossed image as just sort of a shiny image on the white paper. There's a little bit of ink transfer from my stamp pad, but I'm not super worried about that. I am going to be flooding this with color, so it'll all work out in the end. Now I've got my paints. See if I can get those both in the shot. And as a paintbrush, I'm using this water brush. I'm not sure what they call them. I'll try and find the actual name and put a link in the description. And this just basically takes place of a paintbrush and a cup of water, because the handle holds water, and then you can just squeeze it out from the brush. So I think for this one, I've been doing some rainbows, but I think for this one I'm just going to go with maybe some, oh, I don't know, do a bit of an ombre effect. So I think I'm just going to go with blues. I realize I got a flower there. Now I'm just squeezing water into my 3 different colors of blue. Just put some drops of water, and I'm going to start with the lightest, and I'm going to go kind of diagonally, and I need to get a lot more paint on there. It's very, very pale. So I have probably added too much water, but I will just keep mixing the paint into the water to thicken it up. That's a bit better. And then I'll go to the next color. And as I brush over those embossed areas, you can see the white coming through the paint. And I'm just being very generous with the paint at this point. And you see that lovely flower. And now I'm just going to try and blend the colors together a bit better. So I'm wiping off my brush just on a rag, and I'm going to go back into this medium blue and just darken it up a bit and bring it into the light, back into the dark. I'm trying to avoid having any harsh lines in between the colors. Don't know if I'm totally succeeding down there, but yeah, I think that's good. Now that needs time to dry. To clean the brush, I just squeeze the water out till it pours out of the tip. You wipe it in a rag, and pretty soon no color is coming out. So now you just have to let this dry. I'm going to speed it up a bit and use my heat gun on it. Okay, it's not completely dry, but I have one more thing that I want to do. I want to add some of those lovely watercolor sort of ink drops or water spots, I guess you could say. So I'm just squeezing water out of my tip here. I'm trying to get it to come to the end of the brush but not drip, and then I'm going to flick it onto my painted surface. I'll just do that again. I want some big drops, and then I can flick it to get little drops. Just give it maybe 5-10 seconds. And I'm just taking a paper towel and I'm going to very gently press it down. And we've got these lovely sort of watercolor marks on there. And I'm just going to dry that again with my embossing gun. So that feels pretty dry. Now I can stamp my sentiment up in this corner. I've purposefully left it free of the embossing powder, because if you stamp on top of the embossing powder, even with the StazOn ink, which I'm going to be using, it wasn't showing up very well. It would just wipe right off the embossing powder. Okay, so I just grabbed my Look for the Miracles sentiment from my stamp set, and I'm going to ink it up with my StazOn ink. My StazOn ink is getting a bit sort of dry, I probably need to re-ink it. So I am putting, it probably looks like I'm putting a ton of ink on this, but I'm really not. I just have to keep sort of reapplying it to make sure it gets a good coverage. Because I don't think I can really get a second chance at stamping this image. And we're just going to go straight down, press it down, and cross our fingers and hope it works. It's pretty good. It's not maybe as crisp as I would like, but I'm okay with that. It kind of goes with the washed out watercolor effect. And there we have it, a nice little watercolor image. You can add this to a card front, put it on a scrapbook, into pocket page, or simply pin it to your bulletin board and be inspired by it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.